Shadowing how the cost of living crisis will bite into Christmas. There seems to be a sale everywhere you look. Pulling in some bargain hunter are selling a pretty good price, pretty competitive price. But as Australians grapple with cost of a living crisis, not everyone is buying into retail hype. I try to actually minimize my shopping this year. I don't want to spend just to spend money. Black Friday is Australian theme. Why do you have it so? Here we have a select good old-fashioned family games. For David Wall, it's a crucial time for his business. Black Friday sales for sure have taken over the traditional Boxing Day sales, so it is a peak period of the year. Like most retailers, Hobbyco began discounting its goods in early November, much earlier than it has been in the past. It's definitely very competitive out there. It's competitive out there. Discretionary spending obviously down. But this is still going to be spent for Christmas. People still wanted to take out to have the gift giving season. Australians are expected to spend a record $6.36 billion during the Black Friday Cyber Monday weekend, which is 3% higher than 2022. And between November to Christmas, they expect to forecount $67.1 billion, which is similar to last year. Shoppers are looking for a deal. They want shopping on the budget. They're looking for every promotional offer that possibly available from retail community. Even if this November sale do turn out to be record-breaking, economists still say the month ahead will probably get tough. Around 40% of consumers are looking to spend less this year than they did last year. That's pretty panic-punching approach to consumer spending in Christmas period. In fact, they're feeling deeply pessimistic. According to Westpac, consumer confidence is sitting at its weak level since the height of the COVID pandemic, which is bad news for retailers. So July through the end of September, they are really tough time for us. Once we get to January, I think we're really gonna see a real challenge as it relates to consumer confidence and the way consumer are looking to buy moving forward. By lifting interest rate 13 times in the past year and a half, the Reserve Bank plan to bring the inflation down is to inflict economic pain on us so that spend less at shop. And the RBA government say the task is not over yet. Inflation is becoming a homegrown problem as opposed to one import from overseas. Hairdressers, dentists, dining out, sporting other recreational activity. The price of all these services are rising frequently. She wants the rate hike may not be over, which would be another hit to retailers. We've got the model train for 3 years old as a small family owner businesses. Increased electronic cost, increased shipping fee. We're all working harder for a whole lot less what we have done in the past. Unfortunately, that looks to be the track we'll be stuck on for a while. As David Shaw reports, what the silly season is emerging summer masses from Reserve Bank new boss. Michelle Bullock is warning the bank must use a blunt tool of tracking out the rate and hammer out the she said is the threat of homegrown inflation. Tapi Strickland is the head of market economics for National Australia Bank. Tapi Strickland, welcome to business. Thank you. Good afternoon, Alicia. Tapi Strickland, how effective is Michelle Bullock's blunt tool in reading and homegrowing inflation? It's a very good question, and there is definitely a domestic driving component to inflation that we're seeing today. And one way you can answer that is inflation is still relatively persistent, so perhaps it is actually the RBA cash rate impact. The cash rate is even not high enough to have the amount of impacts you'd like in order to reduce inflation pressure quick enough. That's part of the reason why the RBA is in this high rates in November meeting. When it comes to the blunt tool trying to dampen inflation, it appears is disproportionately Australian, those at the low end of the income spectrum. But Michelle Bull last line did argue that it's necessary to cause that pain to save them from further pain at the end. I think Australia there is an overwhelming focusing on mortgage holders, and sometimes we forget that only about 1/3 of Australians actually own with a mortgage, 1/3 actually rent, and 1/3 own outright. For the renters who are as exposed to a region recognized actually are most exposed to a higher inflation. So the longer the inflation persists, the greater impacts that does have on the retail courts. We all know about story behind retail inflation and the amount of inflation is going on in essential services and essential goods bits of the consumer price basket. So in some sense, yeah, it is a blank tool, but in some sense, we have inflation because where interest rate may affect a certain segment of the population. High inflation affects everyone across the Australian population. There are just some irony though, is that the interest rate can't bring rents down, and in many cases are helping push them up. Yeah, so there are many factors that drive at the sharp recovery in population growth as we did see, which to some extent catch up for all the missed population growth that we did see during the pandemic is one of the major drivers for why rent has risen so sharply over the past year. In terms of a CPI basket, so exactly one inflation measure, rent is one component of that. It has been 6 weight. So if rent inflation is growing relatively strongly, that means other bits of the consumer price basket have to grow at slightly slower rates in order to accommodate that rent increase. So that is what the RBA is trying to do. They've got very blunt instruments, but overall they're trying to get the average price of the consumer basket growing by around 2 to 3% on average over the cycle. At the moment, it's growing too high, and rents are definitely one component like that, but doesn't suggest that every component at basket have to grow a little bit slower in order to accommodate the lift in the rent as well. Well, in the story ahead of us, a Black Friday, which is heard of the lot discounts is going to on this week. But Michelle Blanc has warned businesses are developing a bit of mindset of passing on cost. That is definitely we have to see, and it is when you look at the net business survey, and we survey about 400 businesses a month. That's Australian large business survey. In that survey, it's quite clear that firm has been able to pass on higher input costs into final prices. I think that goes to illustrates the degree of demand that is out there in the Australian economy. In the aggregate sense, it allows firms to pass through cost increases, whereas prior to pandemic, there was a great hesitancy to pass through on those price increases because there's a lot of uncertainty exactly how they could pack on demand. So how much of risk is that the inflation expectations are baked in? There is a growing risk and inflation expectation has risen. You haven't necessarily seen in the measure, but the innocence you do hear out there are firms are more able to pass on high input costs in terms of their final prices. You have to see the wage agreement settle at around 4%, and indeed you've seen strong action pick up and a lot of people talking about being needed to be compensated for inflation that we have seen over past couple of years. I think in some sense inflation expectations are slowly rising, and in the respects it was quite encouraging. I was lucky to be in audience of the events then Governor Bullock spoke at. We were asked her question about the inflation target and specifically targeting the midpoint of the inflation target. And the RB's board has been communicating about getting inflation back to the top of that target by the end of 2025.